All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's March 17th, 2021. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the CEO and founder of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your teams while showing them the ropes. If that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered, so feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to our YouTube channel. And if you enjoy the content and want to support this channel, we really like it if you can hit those subscribe buttons. We'll also follow up with an email that you can share it with your team. So with that said, let's kick it off. So a couple announcements. One is Teleport. We've been supporting Teleport for some time. They've been, expanding into this whole Beyond Corp Zero Trust space, and they started with having the best enterprise grade SSH support, so fully audited TTY sessions in SSH with YouTube style playback. They expanded to have support for Kubernetes, basically the Kubernetes API, and all your connections are audited with that. And now they've expanded into this competitive space, dominated by like StrongDM, Zscaler, and some of the others for database connectivity. So this brings Kubernetes, SSH, and database access all under one product, and they support Postgres and MySQL today. Looks like it uses a familiar pattern. You basically have a sidecar deployed somewhere that proxies or sits in front of your database. That sidecar connects to the teleport proxy service, and the teleport proxy architectures basically federated, so all your proxies are then connected and you have a single entry point into your entire system. So do check that out if you are evaluating enterprise-y options for how to do this. Any questions on that?
Does this make you folks rethink where you're going in regards to the Beyond Corp solution, or is this just,
This is like the March 17th update on where are we at now with Beyond Corp and Zero Trust. Yeah. I really love the product once it's installed. It is pretty gnarly to deploy, as are all the security products, StrongDM included. I think Zscaler so far has been the easiest thing we've deployed anywhere, and we haven't yet kicked the tires on Tailscale, but that just keeps coming up. So is it making us rethink things? I'll definitely continue promoting, I think, Teleport as an alternative consideration to one of the other offerings like StrongDM. But my biggest pet peeve is for us to get feature parity with what we do today with Keycloak and Gatekeeper, which we no longer recommend just because of uncertainty in the ecosystem, is far from where we want it. So we have a whole bunch of feature requests out for their web application proxy. Nuru is our SME, our subject matter expert at Cloud Posse. And there's just a lot of things we want in the Teleport product. So one of the things about Teleport is it's not built as a Kubernetes first product. They work with a lot of enterprise customers, and probably not all that up to speed on Kubernetes. But what we want is like an operator-based pattern to work with Teleport, where when we deploy a new CRD for Teleport, we can automatically add an application to the proxy or automatically add a configuration for a new database to it. And we want all that driven by CRDs. And there's no way to do that today. That said, there's no way to do that with any of the products today. So it's like we're unfairly criticizing gravitational and teleport for this, but we know they're good for it. So, guys, come on. I know you're listening. All right. Next. So another fun announcement, more so because Cloud Posse has been doing a lot with ECS over the past couple months. We've been predominantly focused on EKS, and we had an opportunity to really double down on how we can refine our strategy with ECS, expand it to support preview environments, expand it to run database migrations and all of that stuff. So I think we have as a company now a really awesome strategy for how to work with ECS. In an organization for organizations that don't want EKS. However, one of the big pain points has been how do you exec into that container when you want to debug things? Like, it's really a helpful pattern, right? If you have your CICD pipelines, you want to be able to exec into those, debug them. If you're deploying to Kubernetes, you exec into those and debug them, understand what the heck's going on. And now you have that for ECS. Previously to this, we had I was pretty proud of our hack. We just deployed Teammate inside the container, and then we would connect to the ECS task. We don't need that hack anymore. First class capability of ECS. Doesn't require too much. So this piggybacks on the systems manager, the AWS SSM systems manager, session manager capability, I believe, to allow you to exec into the containers. And you basically need to add some additional IAM permissions and then redeploy. There's some other things one might wants to add here that are optional. We haven't yet kicked the tires on it. Actually, I was hoping somebody on the call maybe has already kicked the tires on this and can share.
Hey, Eric, it's Michael. I'm the
Hey,
one
Michael.
who posted the question for office hours about this.
Awesome.
And this is something that I've wanted for a while, and it's kind of come to a head recently because I'm working with an application it's a Rails 6 application, and we're deploying it in ECS, and it works fine. We can get the task definition in place and everything, but there's one particular step right when you deploy the application where the developer needs to open a Rails console against the app and do some things on the back end to set up user accounts. So that first user that logs in, they have admin privileges or something like that.
Yeah.
And if they're on a server, that's easy to do. They SSH to the server, they Rails C, and they have their console and they can do whatever, they need to do. But we're doing this in a container now. And then it's like, well, crap, what do we do? So all of our security groups, they're set such that the ECS cluster, service, and task can connect to the database, but nothing else can.
Yeah.
So we work around it by opening up that security group to allow 10 dot whatever. And then from their workstation, the developer can Rails C and connect and do all that stuff. But this would fix all of that because they could just say, I want to connect to this task in this cluster or this service, and Rails C as the command, and boom, they're up and running. I did get so far as to start to get connected to one, but there was something that I was missing. I was already using the SSM plugin for SSH access. So we have closed port 22 on our EC2 instances, and we rely on SSM to open that connection. So that works great. We already have that in place.
That would be the other alternative, right? Like you can just have a bastion somewhere with that stuff, and the bastion can even be on a private subnet and using SSM agent, and then have connectivity to everything. So I was just going to this is the other alternative, right?
And that is one alternative. We haven't gotten that far yet, but we do have a backplane security group in place so that we can attach to. That security group is attached to the ECS service. It's attached to RDS. And then you could spin up a EC2 instance attached to that security group, and then you can do, all these sort of back-end commands that you needed. But having exec is just kind of like you said, it's, native. It's
makes sense.
Supported.
Especially for the Rails console, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
Has anyone else kicked the tires on this, or?
Have not, but I have a suggestion for you, Michael, and we could take this, offline. But I found that all of those, I had a bunch of similar tasks where I would, tell an engineering team that I was implementing for, like, hey, SSH into here and run some command to do a migration or whatever. And I got tired of telling teams to do that. So I implemented a tool to automate that type of thing for ECS specifically. I'll send it in the office hours chat, but basically if you have simple things like migrations is a good one with Rails, you can, use just a task definition that does the same thing that you would have somebody run manually via SSH or ECS exec. And then you just, run that as part of a local command that spins up a container to do that one specific thing and then spins down. Pretty simple way of doing it, but is often like not automated. So I went and, made a repeatable pattern around it for ECS.
To be clear though, it's not really like that. That works with using the AWS CLI, right? To trigger an ECS task.
So it actually, I wrote a Golang project to do it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, share that. That'll be really interesting for us to see.
Yeah, I did. Where you just like provide a YAML configuration and it'll go and run a task for you. But yeah, there is a very good AWS run API for ECS where like you can say run task with these parameters or this command, and it allows you to do a lot. It's usually hidden by layers of other things that are hard to get to. But yeah, that's the idea.
I dig it. I like it. I wish I'd known about this. I will. We might be adding this to Cloud Posse packages.
I haven't talked about it. I haven't touched it in it looks like 9 months.
Okay.
It was a fun. It was my way of like learning Go.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's cool. But I like how simple you made it. You almost made it like remote make or like Go task, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. Let's see here. What did I press? Okay. All right. And just on cue, Terraform, 1 hour before our call, released 0.15 beta 2 for office hours. Now, one of the cool things they announced here is to the validation for JSON. With JSON output, they're adding additional diagnostic information, so you should know more about like what caused the event. I think this is going to make the integration with IDEs more powerful, the integration with like GitHub Action workflows better, so you can validate code and comment on exactly the line of code that had the problem. So that's cool. Anybody already kicking the tires on 0.15?
I can't keep up. I mean, I'm still rocking 1226.
Dude, Michael. Yeah, it is hard. It is a pain in the butt to keep up with it all.
Is 0.15 the latest version between 1.0? Did they confirm that?
Yeah, I forget who confirmed it recently, but we did hear a pretty strong confirmation from somebody at HashiCorp that they're targeting at 15 as the last one.
I actually saw both Mitchell and apparently Mart both have written that 15 is their last version before they go general availability with 1.0.
So 1.0 should be coming end of April, something like that, mid-April?
At this rate, yeah.
Yeah, who knows?
Well, once they go to 1.0,
soon.
are they just going to be? Are they going to keep revving as they've been doing all these?
Well, the 1.0 guarantee is basically that the API doesn't break and then everything is backward compatible, like from that point forward. Like that's their whole plan behind it. So like the language changes we saw in the whole rewrites in 2.0 and all that should like those should not happen again. Like I guess unless they do it for a 2.0 release and say this is a major release and we're going to change things, but it certainly shouldn't be at the pace that we've seen breaking changes between 0.9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 now.
Everyone,
yeah. So
yeah, it's all been gearing up to getting to 1.0. There was like just a lot of tech debt on how it was constructed, and I think the module for each was one of the really awesome much requested things. All right. Yeah, we have our jobs page. It's updated. So if you are looking for your next gig, you want to work with open source, you're interested in working on less tech debt, more awesome stuff, we are a pretty awesome opportunity. That said, we do work predominantly with subcontractors. So if you're open to 1099 opportunities, you're based in the US or North America, that's ideal. Do reach out. All right, so that's announcements. Any other cool announcements before I move on to answering questions? All right, we'll go to talking points. So, quick question was asked by Bart Codens just a few minutes ago. Bart, I saw your question also in Slack earlier this week. Sorry, we didn't get a chance to answer it. So Bart was asking, how do you manage IAM user login profiles like console passwords with a team? And the keybase key cannot and should not be shared amongst the team members. What do you do if the original creator of the login profile leaves the company and the key is deleted? So before I answer your question, and this is asking, this is kind of like the, very popular thing I like to bring up, this XY problem is more about asking about your attempted solution than the actual problem. And the actual problem is, how do you manage users with AWS more effectively? Obviously, one way is with IAM users. And if that's a hard requirement, I get it. We were using IAM users for a long time at Cloud Posse. I mean, from 2015, 2016, 2017. But starting 2018, 2019, 2020, we were just using SAML. And now in 2021, we've moved on to AWS SSO. So the thing is that IAM users are, I think their only purpose these days is for system level user accounts that you need to integrate AWS with third-party services. You're using Circle CI for some reason. You need Circle CI to talk to AWS. Okay, you provision a system user for that. Or you're using GitHub Actions without self-hosted runners, because if you had self-hosted runners, you'd be using EC2 instance profiles, etc. So you might be referring to our IAM user module. Yeah, so we have two here. So they're opinionated in kind of what they do. The system user module is the one that we would just use for this purpose I was talking about, like for Circle CI. This just, I think this does two things. Does this one do SSM too? No, so this one just generates the key pairs for a user. They're emitted as outputs. Yeah, not best practice. What one would do from that point is write those to SSM and then have some other process of getting those to Circle or whatever. But your question is about Keybase. And if we're talking about the IAM user module that we have, the PGP key can be automatically passed, right, by just specifying the Keybase username. And then it uses that to randomly generate a password, encrypt it with the user's public key, and then as an output of this, you would output the decryption command that they would use for Keybase to do that. Thing is, Keybase, they were acquired by Zoom. The press release for it didn't bode much confidence about the future of Keybase. It was an acqui-hire. They bought the team so they could address the medium bleeding problems with Zoom and encryption. So they got some subject matter experts to go do that. I don't know what the long-term prospect is for Keybase, so we stopped recommending it.
I can comment on that. There haven't been any commits or any substantial commits to Keybase in forever. There were multiple bugs in the Keybase app that were blocking, like iOS OS upgrade bugs, and I just completely stopped using it. So I would strongly suggest not using Keybase anymore. It's no longer an option. There's absolutely no input or comment on anything. It seems it's just completely ignored at this point. And yeah, AWS SSO is working great. It has an awesome UI. It's still not integrated with all the tools, which is annoying. So you might still need IAM users for things like CDK or some other AWS CLI tools that don't know SSO, but it's so easy to change accounts and to switch and to manage everything in a highly compliant way.
Totally agree. Totally agree with Lad end to end on that.
Yeah, I can speak to this specific to his question. I don't think Bart is in the call, but in case he responds to this, I have one client that I still have to manage IAM users as a requirement by the client, or they didn't want to mess with SAML. I don't know why. We're going to be switching them, of course, but the thing that I do is instead of passing a keybase key, use a actual PGP key, and then store that in SSM, and then only have lockdown access to just admins on your account to be able to get that key, and then you can decrypt the user's passwords using that raw PGP key instead of a keybase key. I think that's the path forward here, because nobody wants to suggest using keybase anymore because it's on its last leg, and is likely to sail off into the sunset at some point soon.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just add to that. If you are insistent on continuing to use Keybase, you can actually pass the Keybase team there and have a team that specifically has access to those credentials. And then when you remove that user from the team, that user actually no longer can decrypt the key that's the secret that's encrypted for that team's key. Although my other caveat to that is if someone had the keys to the kingdom and they leave your organization, you should have a process where you go through and rotate all of your secrets that person ever had access to anyway, and shouldn't rely on the fact that they no longer have access to them right now. Assume that they decrypted every secret that they were allowed to before they left, and have a copy of that somewhere, and then change that as soon as that person leaves.
And we all do that. Raise your hands.
I was going to mention it. Yeah.
If you put in the right process, it's not as hard to do, right?
I agree.
You have to have a checklist for offboarding administrators. And it takes discipline, but you can actually do it. I have worked in a couple of organizations where we've done that very successfully.
I think you need the right tooling too, though. Like you need something like Vault that does, rotates keys easily, and you can't have too much hard-coded stuff. It can't be a big manual process every time you have a engineer.
And depending on the number of these integrations, it gets gnarly. Many of them you can't have simultaneous keys. So the second you generate a new one, it invalidates the other one. You have running systems. Those running systems immediately fail. It sounds beautiful in practice, but few things are as easy to rotate as like RDS credentials maybe.
Well, and it goes hand in hand with principle of least privilege. There. So don't give everyone keys to everything just because they're an administrator, right? Either.
Don't get yourself into the position to have to worry about it. Cool. Any other comments related to Bart's question here? The final question there to Bart was, what do you do if the original creator of the login profile leaves the company? You just deprovision that IAM user, right? Do you taint and recreate it? Not following that part. I would just delete the resource or deactivate the resource.
Yeah, I can add on this also. The using of SSO. Can you hear me, guys, first?
Yep.
Hello? Yep. Okay. So SSO, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, actually. I agree with most of you guys on this one. So SSO, I think, is the next reasonable step that we need to implement. All of these problems can vanish when you use SSO. and it's easy for onboarding or removing when someone leaves the team. SSO already have a module on Cloud Posse and can be automated, and also you can integrate it with like most of AWS resources like VPN. Now you can have like VPN with back to the to the topic before. So you can have SSO with VPN now, and you can have SSO with workspace or anything that need federated access. Yeah, so I think the answer is you don't need to use IAM anymore, right? Unless it's like a requirements here.
Well, yeah, thanks for adding that additional context, Mohammed. All right, let's move on to the next question, which is turning the mic over. Anybody have any question? I don't have anything, any other canned materials for today, believe it or not.
Michael had a question about outputting IAM creds, but I think Matt's helping him out.
Okay. Cool. Man, we had a nightmare situation this week on an engagement. It was just this weirdest problem we were trying to solve. We're creating preview environments, right, for a customer, so you can have a full environment deployed any number of times. And it was working perfectly, right? We deploy the first environment, then we deploy the second environment, and it was just failing. And the problem was, in this case, something was causing it. We were deploying the same exact version of the module. We were actually calling it twice to create one for migrations, one for the web apps. Turns out what we were using is this .terraform directory in our source control. And when Terraform does a git clone of your modules to your Terraform directory, to your .terraform, it just does a full deep clone, not a shallow clone or anything. You get all the files there. And then when you refer to that module again in your source code, Terraform does a local lookup in the cache to see if it's already checked it out. If it gets a cache hit, it just does a shallow copy of all those files to a new directory without the dot files. So it was very confusing why it would work on the first invocation and the second invocation of the module, it would always fail. So the fix was very straightforward. Just rename it to something without a dot. But lesson B, do not use dots as prefixes to your Terraform submodules.
I had a question, Eric, kind of
When
related
you said
to your,
nightmare, I kind of figured, they lost a ton of data, or they blew millions of dollars worth of EC2 instances.
Oh yeah, nightmare. Yeah, no. So thank you for. It's a nightmare for us because we've been putting in a week of all-nighters. We were supposed to go live on Wednesday, and we couldn't because of this problem. Ultimately, we had no idea how to solve it at that point. We were thinking it was a Terraform problem, but fortunately, it was something we could fix on our own. So that was the relative nightmare. Fortunately, no people died, no money was lost, and we're all good. And I like you putting that into context. Michael Jenkins, you were saying?
Yeah, I had a question about your preview environment. So I was just wondering, what's the kickoff to create the environment? If it's like a branch or a pull request, or like what's the trigger?
Yeah. No, it's good. So this is a conversation I want to have a lot more because it's something that's been bothering us for a long time in Terraform, I think even as a community, but also as a company in delivering this capability to customers. And we finally cracked the nut on how to do this. I don't have anything public that I can show you, but the gist of it is that we need to start thinking about how we do Terraform continuous delivery the same way that we do Kubernetes continuous delivery with tools like Argo CD. So in the Argo CD pattern, or probably Flux and others, you have a deployment repo, or many deployment repos. And that deployment repo represents the desired state of something. So it's like the deployment repo for this Kubernetes cluster. And all your job in your CI, all it is to manipulate the state of that repo to be the state of what you want your Kubernetes cluster to be. And then you have Argo CD, you know, manipulate Kubernetes so that it matches the state of that repo. So when we think about Terraform and Terraform continuous delivery, especially in the case of preview environments, it's the same thing. Up to now, everyone that I know treats Terraform mostly like, you know, you have a monorepo or maybe a couple monorepos that represents your desired state. And then you have some process that knows that when this directory changes, you run Terraform apply on it. But the thinking is more like, we need to run Terraform apply on this directory when we change it. It's not like synchronize what's here with AWS. So that was the pivotal thing for us to think about it, is that we should treat our infrastructure repo as the state of AWS, and it doesn't have to be manipulated by humans. Humans is one way that repo is manipulated. So what we do, therefore, is we have GitHub Actions that simply clone or copy the Terraform code into the infrastructure repo from microservices. So the challenge we've always had was like, well, we want the code to be close to the microservices. So if we have a microservice for you know, some backend API, we want it deployed with an ECS task. Where does the Terraform code, the HCL code for that ECS task live? Well, I think it should live with that API service. Then the challenge was, well, if we have all these services and all of them have infrastructure in them, and all of them need settings and settings per environment, and all of them need access to AWS in order to deploy, it's really hard to figure out where anything was deployed. You have to give all these repos God mode to deploy to AWS or your cloud services, and you have to implement your continuous delivery pipeline with all these repos. I hate that. So the epiphany for us was you create a single infrastructure repo, or, you know, like a deploy repo in Argo CD. You have your GitHub Actions in the microservice, copy code over there, throw it over the wall. And then you have a separate continuous delivery system attached to that, which just synchronizes what's in that repo continuously to your environment. And since it's Terraform, do we actually do like continuously, or do we do continuously with an asterisk, and that asterisk is with an approval? Yeah, we do it with an approval. But that can always be turned off once we feel totally confident of everything. So, so to answer your question, how we do it with preview environments? Well, we have a GitHub action that for the pull request, it opens it just commits directly to a branch in a deployment repo, adding some Terraform code, and then the continuous delivery sees, oh, new code, new preview environment, make it, deploy it.
No, that's pretty cool, because I mean, I've got a couple folks that I'm working with, and that's something that they really want, to be able to have their developers say, you know, hey, I've got this new feature, I want to test it out, I want you to see it. But then there's one QA environment, or there's no QA environment, you know, and they're struggling to get it onto the live site or whatever the case is. So then it's like, well, we need this, you know, preview environment. And it's the case of, okay, what triggers that preview environment? And from that trigger, what's the process to run the Terraform that builds it out, deploys the code, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, something like this, yeah, it is very applicable to that situation.
So if you like the pattern, we have the way we do it is with Spacelift, is Terraform Spacelift Cloud infrastructure automation repo. This is based on spacelift.io, which is a CICD platform for infrastructure as code. Does a really good job with Terraform, supports open policy agent, Terraform provider for it. Everything can be done with infrastructure as code. And then here's our opinionated way that we embrace it, based on this concept of the stack configurations that we use everywhere. So,
hey
yeah.
guys, Martin here.
Hey, Martin.
I got a question. You are all in Terraform, but there is a shift, I think, in the industry and how people treat infrastructure as code. And you also mentioned it, that the pain points in how you deploy new environments. Yeah. And the one thing that I heard about recently is crossplane. So the pattern for an operator who would spin up the infrastructure is something that can, on a reconciliation pattern, So it would be something that all the time watch your infrastructure and can spin everything and can remediate the state of the infrastructure. And I was wondering, isn't it something that eventually all the companies will move to? Because it's painful with Terraform to control what is going on and to reconciliate everything all the time.
Yeah, I like that you brought that up. I don't have an articulate answer to it. As much as all I can say is that what we're doing now is that what we're going to be doing 10 years from now. No, what we're doing now isn't what we were doing 2 years ago. Isn't what we were doing 1 year ago. So have we solved it, nailed it? No. Maybe I should definitely take another look at Crossplane. I've heard good things about it, but I don't know more. Anybody want to tack on to that? What Marcin brought up?
I have an opinion about it.
Right.
Although I'm part of Cloud Posse, but this is Pepe's opinion. Okay, this is personal. But I I believe that that's the reason why things are shifting to is because actually the companies are moving to like security to the left, or whatever the new pattern, the new marketing word they use now, shift left. So they're actually putting more emphasis on actually securing the infrastructure and building it with infrastructure tools like Terraform, Pulumi, or whatever. So now they're realizing, oh, okay, now it's good if we actually disable the root account. It's good if we use SSO instead of IAM accounts. So if you look at it from that point of view, like if you were just starting with infrastructure as code today, it would be very different to think about using this drift detector technology or pattern. If you don't have access for users to be able to change infrastructure in the console using ClickOps, then why you would use such a solution? I think it is more of a historical problem of permissions given to the people that actually use that infrastructure instead of like a need for another tool to solve it, basically. That's my opinion.
All right. Yeah, no, I mean, so I think the gist of that was that the reason why we need to do all this reconciliation is a band-aid to an underlying problem that why is this stuff changing outside of infrastructure as code to begin with? And if we preclude that from happening, this is a little bit less. I guess the only other thing I could add to that would be like, there's also a compliance side of this. How do you ensure? How do you validate that what we actually have in source control is actually what is deployed? And I think that's as important as anything with the reconciliation. I know M0, for example, has this ability to do reconciliation. M0 is one of the many what we're calling these tacos providers, Terraform automation collaboration software. And with that, you can have like a scheduled reconciliation that just reruns your projects on all, just reruns Terraform plan on everything on like a nightly basis. That way you can see if it's diverged from what you last had known. And this can definitely happen even if your source control wasn't changed, even if there was no ClickOps. Because of remote data and data sources, your modules and their plans can change. Tim Gurley was asking, is there a way to... Charlie, no. Sorry, my dog. Tim Gurley was asking, does Spacelift specifically work with Terragrunt? I don't know 100%. They do have a lot of escape hatches you can use. And it may or may not work. Matt said they don't have specifically support for Terragrunt. Maybe there's some issues like parsing the output from Terragrunt or stuff like that. Cloud Posse doesn't use Terragrunt.
I will say that Spacelift is the only, well, M0 too, but M0 and Spacelift are the two in the tacos world that I've looked into more recently, and Spacelift has reasonable pricing, at least compared to Terraform Cloud. Terraform Cloud pricing model, once you get past the team tier, makes it a non-starter.
Take your AWS bill. If you're a smaller company, take your AWS bill and triple it, and that's the Terraform price factor. So I don't know. It is rough. I hope that Terraform or HashiCorp as a company comes up with some more accessible pricing for Terraform Cloud for non-enterprise accounts.
It's also interesting because they haven't touched their product in, seems like 12 months at least. Like it seems like they haven't built anything new for a while.
That's what it feels like. It's what it feels like. I think there's more stuff probably coming, but there's not been much communication about the roadmap and what's there, so it's hard to see. Meanwhile, I forget the expression, we're number two, so we try harder. It was the famous tagline of one of the rental car companies. But that's the story with like Spacelift, Scalar, and M0. One thing about M0 is, last I heard, they still don't have a Terraform provider. So it's a little bit ironic to be an infrastructure as code platform, but not be configured with infrastructure as code. So I think that it goes without saying that should be a minimum requirement for any infrastructure as code platform, that you can deploy it with infrastructure as code. Tim Gurley also asks, what about Atlantis? Yeah, so Atlantis has come a long ways, and Atlantis can definitely work with Terragrunt, and Atlantis supports custom workflows. So if you're okay with self-hosting it and you want to go with Atlantis, I think it's a good option. Before you do Atlantis, I would just kick the tires on, or at least watch the videos of these other things, and you'll see they push the envelope a lot on what to expect from your GitOps platform for Terraform. And having used these newer systems, it leaves a lot more to be desired from my point of view. But I don't know, Pepe, do you have a alternative point of view on that one?
That is not biased because I'm a contributor in Atlantis.
Yeah, exactly. And you've been using both lately, and you've had some frustration, to be honest, lately,
actually,
right?
That's why I'm going to comment, because, Atlantis, because is an open source project, although it's actually right now supported by HashiCorp in a way. They are building new features which were lacking. So if you come from the world of Atlantis a long time ago, like 2 years ago, and you didn't actually check, there wasn't any other solutions really, like Spacelift and so on, to compare to Atlantis. But now, if you look at what they offer some pretty cool features, which you would like to see in Atlantis, or maybe you thought that Atlantis should have. So there is a lot of to begin using a commercial solution like a Spacelift. Although I know a little bit about the roadmap of Atlantis, and there's some really, really cool things coming on. But if you compare the commercial solution, where there is a company for profit putting time and effort to build a good solution, compared with the open source of Atlantis, which has like 6 contributors, it will take a while. It will take a while to get there.
Yeah. I like to think of Atlantis as kind of training wheels to get started. Wet your teeth with GitOps and Terraform. Get an opinion about it. Get comfortable with it. But then you graduate from that and want something more. All right. Any other questions related to this or something else?
Hi guys. David here.
Hey David.
I have a question for you, Eric. Like 6 days ago, you post a question in the Terraform channel asking about different opinions on a project that you were working with.
Oh yeah.
ECS, Fargate, and AWS CodeDeploy, and a way to trigger the migrations in the same pipeline.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, what was your final decision or route?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I would love to talk about that. So this was the question that David is bringing up. So actually, I had my own question for the community, and I really wanted some feedback on. So is anyone using Terraform to manage and provision ECS Fargate? Anybody using Terraform to together with ECS Fargate and CodeDeploy, and also needing to do database migrations and how they were doing it. And there's some additional context here that I didn't add I probably should have, but one of the things we wanted to do was very selectively run the migrations. We didn't want to run database migrations on every single deploy. We didn't want every ECS task or container in the rollout to attempt to do the migration. We also didn't want didn't want containers to go out that needed the newer version of the schema and would errors. So what will we do in this situation to address all these three use cases? And we bashed our head against the wall. We tried a lot of things. We came up with what I feel like is the best alternative to the solution. So one of the things we can't do with Terraform, for example, is at deployment time, just trigger a one-off ECS task to run. We also are doing this whole pattern I was telling you guys about earlier about how to do preview environments. So our whole job is just to create this Git repo should look like what we want AWS to look like. So that means we have a asynchronous rollout. That means that we cannot use a standard code pipeline that says run migration, then run deployment, then do this other thing. Or we cannot use GitHub Actions to trigger the migration and then do the deployment, because we're doing this asynchronously, where we deploy, where all we're doing is updating our Terraform code, and we want this whole apparatus to just know that it needs to run a database migration when it should run a database migration. And we want to still roll out our applications the normal way. So we came up with a solution, and the way we do it is this way. Is we created an ECS task that just runs in perpetuity. It literally sleeps infinity after we do a database migration. And that is one task. And then we have a separate task that represents the web application. And then we have a separate task that represents the cron jobs that need to run. And then we have a separate task that represents like the sidekick workers. So as you can get it, this is a Rails app. And using this GitOps strategy that we've been talking about here, what we do is when we want to run a database migration, we label the pull request needing a database migration. And then what happens when we merge to master, all we need to do is, main, master production, all the different environments. What we do is we check the pull request that was merged and check the labels. And then we commit to the deployment repo the ECS task pinned to the version of the database migration SHA when that label was present. So if the label's not present, we don't update it. Then it's just always running on that old version. And then, 10 PRs later, we add that label and we merge. That's when we trigger the deployment event with a GitHub action. The deployment action wakes up. The deployment action installs updates the configuration in source control. And then Spacelift sees, stuff changed. I need to do something with it. And it redeploys it. So this is this is implemented using this whole decoupled, asynchronous, continuous delivery workflow with Terraform and Spacelift and GitHub Actions.
That's the specific use case, Eric, that I built that ECS run project for, was to do exactly that. But yeah. You're doing it through a GitOps approach. I was doing it through pipeline-driven type of.
Yeah, so having a pipeline, and it gets so easy when you just have that pipeline. But then so many other things get very hard. So it's got it's these trade-offs. So I still see a use case for the ECS run thing you had. Frankly, I think in the interest of time and our deadlines, we would have just done the ECS run if it was easier and we didn't have to use the AWS Cloud to do it. Maybe we would have done that. But what was I going to say though related to that? I think, I don't know what more I would say to it, but I like that we achieved it just using pure native Terraform for ECS, and then we were able to solve it with a single deployment delivery tool. Cool.
But thank you for the explanation. It's very useful.
Yes. Thanks for asking the question, David. All right. Moving on. Any other questions? Let's see here. How Wang is asking. Oh, it was suggesting maybe other ways of.
Maybe use a SQS. So you can bring up a EC2 instance, and after database migration finished, then you can terminate the instance.
Yeah.
Based on the message.
Yeah, that would have been another way we could do it, is have the ECS task possibly triggered or have it run through a Lambda. The key thing is we need to make sure that the Lambda isn't the one doing the migration because of the time limit expiration, and that the fact that basically migrations can take longer than the execution time of a Lambda.
Yeah. For this case, the Lambda may not be a good fit, but use the SQS. So to trigger Lambda function to bring up the instance or terminate the instance.
Yeah, exactly. I did see similar solutions. People said like, you can just bring up an instance with the user data that just runs the migration and then terminates, for example. Calls shutdown negative HF as the last step of its startup script. So it terminates itself. I guess, from a Terraform perspective, what would be awkward about it would always be showing a plan changes.
Yep, cool.
All right, let's see, in the channel here for office hours. Any more questions? Okay, Matt was just sharing some other. Yeah, anyone else have any questions I can help answer, or the community can? All right. Well, is this going to be one of the first office hours we end early? Oh, man.
We'll have to be on our game next week to come up with good questions.
Yeah. I exhausted the bank of questions. There's been some weeks we just had even more than we could answer.
I just sent a question at the end.
Let's see here. Would you pick Teleport over StrongDM now that they have support for MySQL and Postgres? I don't know. I don't think we have a mature enough answer on that. I do know StrongDM has definitely gone through all of their compliance checks and audits and score well on that side. I don't know how well. I don't know where gravitational or Teleport is on that. One thing to note about gravitational, though, is that they have, I wouldn't say pivoted so much as they have just doubled down on Teleport as a product. So gravitational used to be like a company that had multiple product lines, including, was it Graviton? Gravitational, I believe, was what their Kubernetes distribution was, or Gravity was what it was called. And while they're still supporting it for their existing customers, they are doubling down on just Teleport now as their core company focus. So now when you go to Gravitational, you just land on Teleport. So I guess they are looking to be highly competitive with StrongDM and Boundary, if one can even claim that, since Boundary is open source. But, well, so is Teleport. But, yeah. All right. Come on, Vlad. You have something interesting you worked on this week. Are you still on the call, Vlad?
Lost him a half hour ago.
Lost him a half hour ago. All right.
I have something that's I mean, getting away from containers and going to the API gateway space, that's kind of a head scratcher for me. So I'm trying to implement an API gateway that should only be accessible internally, to a corporate or enterprise network. And I mean, by default, your API gateways are pretty much public. So you can reel them in by using VPC links and VPC endpoints. But the, first of all, the AWS docs are kind of unclear about like how that all is kind of wired together. And it was specifically with the use of custom domains. And at the same time, I'm trying to implement this in Terraform. So if anybody has done a private API gateway with a vanity URL that is only accessible from an internal network, I would love to see your solution for that.
That's not possible.
Okay.
No, you have to use a VPC endpoint within the internal endpoint that you actually configure an API gateway. That's a limitation of the API gateway.
Okay, and I'll paste the stanza from the documentation that's really confusing because
yeah, I tried to do exactly
say,
what you were doing. Exactly.
Okay. All right, fair enough. I mean, just to finish the statement, the documentation says that you can use some sort of custom domain name, but the explanation I give is very circular in how you will access it, in addition to limiting the permissions that allow the access to that custom endpoint. It's mind-boggling. So yeah, if anybody had implemented that, I was very curious.
Yeah, that actually relates to something that Pepe almost was going to be working on here pretty soon. So it's interesting. We have an internal kind of requirement to do something like that.
Support for vanity names or
vanity names for private API gateways. Haven't looked into doing it. Don't know hard or easy. Michael says it's a little confusing based on the docs. So
I did paste it into the Slack for the office hours. As I'm looking through, there is an example that says, hey, this is what you got to do to limit access to your API gateway, to your VPC, and if you want to do a domain. I mean, that's not the extent of the documentation, but that's kind of like the core piece of the documentation that just has me scratching my head.
Yeah.
I remember vaguely something around this area. I think I was using Pingdom at a group I was at and Twitch, and they had in their early days had vanity names, and so they're trying to do single sign-on with the vanity names. That was hard because you need normalized names. And so what they end up doing, there was some way from the standard where you could inject like a hook to I don't know, use that vanity name, and it was some type of weird Java meta language or something like that. Was it's like sort of standard format that they used. I don't know, it's OIDC or something like that. But it's been so long, I just kind of vaguely remember some, in the vanity names, and was a big problem for SSO.
This was for Pingdom?
No, this was for Twitch that would use Pingdom.
Twitch. Okay. So maybe look up Twitch and API gateway and and just limit your search to Medium because that's where it's all posted always. So.
I know, right?
All right. Well, on that note, I think we got to wrap things up for today. We're out of time. Please remember, go over to youtube.com/c/Cloud Posse and subscribe to our channel. It'll help us out in a big way. Also, remember to register for our office hour sessions. They happen every week. We'll send you a calendar invite. Go to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours to get that calendar invite. If you haven't joined our Slack team, head over to slack.cloudposse.com. We got about 3,500 awesome people, all hanging out and helping each other out on DevOps. So talk to you guys all same time, same place next week, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks again, Eric.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye everyone.
See y'all.
Bye, everyone.